On the big debate, why do teachers have a duty to create good British citizens? And what is Britishness anyway? Hello, the 7/7 attacks, race riots in northern towns and cities, alienation, ghettoisation. The government may argue British society isn't broken, but it knows these are the cracks. And schools have been put at the front line of solving the problems, given the task of helping create social cohesion. An exclusive poll for Teachers TV has found that 3/4 of teachers do think that teaching Britishness is part of their role. Half are opposed to the wearing of religious symbols in school, though. So what does it all mean? Should school leavers take an oath of allegiance to Queen and country? What about a British national holiday? And how do schools turn out good British citizens when no one can agree what being British actually means? To help find the answers to these questions, with me today are the Director of the Centre for Social Cohesion, Douglas Murray, the ex-president of the NUT, Baljeet Gale, the former head of Deptford Green School and author of the government's report on diversity and citizenship in schools, Sir Keith Ajegbo, and the Paralympian athlete and TV presenter Ade Adipitan. We've also assembled an audience of experts, teachers, pupils and parents who will all be helping us find out what Britishness is and why it matters for schools. So what is Britishness? Let's get a quick view from our panel. Douglas Murray.
Oh, I'd say that Britishness is, or at least was, founded on large parts of the state, functions of the state, the rule of law, the courts, the monarchy, the church, the army, a whole set of institutions, really, which have been subjected to a kind of cultural hooliganism over recent decades. I think we're just in the process of discovering, once again, it's easier to pull things down than it is to build them up.
Sir Keith Ajegbo.
I was born just after the war, and obviously the sense of Britishness just after a victory in the war was great in the country. But I think I felt as a young person excluded because I was mixed race. My mum was white, my father black. But increasingly I felt able to be British as it has developed as a multicultural country. Now I know there's lots of controversy about the word multicultural, but it's made me feel that I can be British, whereas I think when I was younger I felt excluded from being British. So I think there's been a change.
Baljeet Gale, what is Britishness to you?
To me, I don't feel British even after 42 years of being in this country. I think it means different things to different people, and I think if you want to be British, defined as British, that is fine. But if you start defining the term Britishness, which Alan Johnson, the Secretary of State for Education in early 2007, who defined it as tolerance, respect for the rule of the law and freedom of speech. Once you start attributing those values and saying they're uniquely British, that is certainly not the case. Those values are good values and can be attributed to people all around the world.
Ade?
It took me a long time and it'd be surprising as a Paralympian to discover my Britishness. But I think I really found out what Britishness meant to me when I left the UK and travelled to other countries and realised that, yeah, I'm completely different from the people. I mean, you go to the States, even though they speak the same language, we have a completely different sense of humour to them, you know, and our culture is completely different. So I think Britishness means so many different things, and we live in a very fluid society, and Britishness means seeing people of different faces, different races, eating different food and having a laugh.
All right, well, thank you all for that. And there's the basic dilemma. 4 very different takes on what Britishness is. So is it possible to define Britishness? Are there aspects of our national character that fit easily into some overarching definition? Or is the multicultural nature of the modern United Kingdom just too complex to be reduced to a single definition? Bad teeth, HP sauce, pillar boxes, queuing. British leitmotifs and stereotypes abound, but what do they tell us about who we really are? Britishness, the word, means so many different things to different people that it begs the question, does it mean anything at all?
Well, personally, I think of fish and chips, and I think of money.
The stereotypical British person, it's like Pride and Prejudice, like someone in the country in like some sort of mansion.
The term British is so flexible it's been used as both a means to unite and divide us. British nationalists claim it belongs solely to so-called indigenous people of the British Isles. Nationalists from Ireland, Scotland and Wales have rejected British identity altogether. In a United Kingdom made up of layered identities, it seems easier to define oneself as Scottish, Irish and Welsh rather than British. Waves of immigration have enriched the British cultural landscape. Today's Britain is one of the most diverse nations in the world. Shakespeare, cream teas and the monarchy share space with a Britishness expressed through the literature of Monica Ali and chicken tikka masala, Britain's favourite dish. But with that mixing of cultures has come division. Cities like Bradford and Oldham have seen race riots, and the global turmoil of this decade has seen a violent rejection of Western values by some British citizens. Gordon Brown sees schools as the front line in enforcing an overarching sense of Britishness. Citizenship classes are meant to tread the fine line between celebrating differences and instilling shared values. But is that an impossible task? Well, let's go to the man who wrote the report, if you like. Sir Keith Ejegbo, you wrote the report on diversity and citizenship. What have you concluded about the place of Britishness in our schools?
Well, I think there's an issue. I think there is an issue about national identity. I think national identity is something that we think about, and I think that we do need to explore that. And I think I think there are layers of it. I think people need to explore their communities, where they live in their communities. I think they need to take that further out to what it means to live in Britain. I think they need to take that further out to what it means to be a European.
But is there any uniformity?
And I think out then to be a global citizen.
I mean, is there any uniformity across the education system about what Britishness is and how it's taught?
No, because I think it is a debate. I mean, schools are about intellectual debate, and I think the country has evolved and changed. And I think it's up to us to rethink and restate what our national identity is, what Britishness is. I think it's an evolving discussion, and that's the intellectual sort of hotbed for kids' voice to get involved in. And I think that's an important part of what schools should be doing, and I think it's an important part of what teachers should be doing, and I think it's an exciting debate.
Douglas Murray, where do you see this new round of social engineering, if you like?
Well, first of all, it's entirely it's been forced upon this country to begin with. And it's also worth mentioning that we shouldn't get confused about the term multicultural. Those of us who have criticised multiculturalism are not criticising multiracialism or racial pluralism in a country. But the critique of multiculturalism is that it hasn't created a united country, it hasn't created a united identity. It has created a ghettoised society in which the community you're born into is the one you will always be treated as being part of.
Let's
and
not
that's
get
not
into
the
that
same thing.
just yet. I mean, in terms of Britishness, though, in schools, how do you feel about the way the government now sees this as a goal to be taught?
Well, it's quite hard to say that you can teach a Britishness that constitutes different parts which have to independently celebrate their different parts. That's it's not mutually exclusive, but it's quite confusing.
Andrew Mycott, now you're from the Britishness Specialist Group at the University of Huddersfield. It's amazing there is such a thing, but I mean, where do you think all this is coming from, and how political is it?
These debates are largely based in England, and if we actually look at the resonance of debates around Britishness in Scotland, Wales and Ireland, they have very little implication. The debates there are more around refining their own separate, distinct national identities. So to talk about teaching Britishness in UK schools is actually a myopic and very narrow debate, and it actually realises that it is an English debate rather than a broader UK debate.
Who else here is from any of the nations of the United Kingdom? We've got any Welsh people in the audience? Yes. I mean, do you even think about Britishness, or are you basically Welsh?
I'm basically Welsh, and coming from rural West Wales and moving up to live in London, it's been as big a culture shock to me as spending time in the Middle East or in Bangladesh, for example. It was a definite shock to the system.
Baljit Gale, if there are lots of teachers who share your apparent hostility to this whole notion, this isn't going to get taught, is it?
Well, I think the whole notion of globalisation, of a global citizen, etc., is something that we can discuss and have good debates on. I think starting from the premise that our students don't have a strong sense of identity is actually wrong. They do have a strong sense of identity. It might not be that they don't think of themselves as being British, but I asked my year 11 how they identified themselves this week, and they said, I think of myself as being a British Bangladeshi Muslim. I'm an England supporter, Chelsea supporter,
so no
and I'm
British.
Bangladeshi. You know, so you know there is no one definition of being British.
I think it's very difficult when you take London into account, because London is a very unique place in the world, you know, and it makes things very difficult. I've had an opportunity to travel all over the world, and I've never come across anywhere that has such a melting pot of cultures. So to find a definition of Britishness within London, that makes it even more
Just
difficult.
briefly, Douglas.
I was just going to say, I mean, it is notable in these discussions. You wouldn't be able to say to somebody, don't celebrate your Bangladeshi past, but you can happily say to people, we shouldn't celebrate our Britishness. That's to lead to a lot of trouble sometime in the future.
OK, well, what do teachers make of this whole Britishness debate? Teachers TV commissioned some exclusive polling data to try and find out. When asked whether the promotion of British values is part of a teacher's role, nearly 3/4 agreed that it is, with 1 in 5 saying it was a central part of their role, according to the YouGov research. When asked whether they identified themselves as British, more than a third said they didn't feel strongly British. The survey then asked about important factors that promote cohesion in schools. The majority of teachers thought that strong school leadership and teachers were the most important. 58% of teachers agreed that strong discipline is important, and slightly fewer said close ties to the local community are what's crucial. And 20% of teachers believe that a clearly enforced uniform code is the most important factor in promoting cohesion. And when asked if pupils should be allowed to wear religious symbols, even if it breaks the uniform code, in total, nearly half of teachers disagreed. There's clearly some hostility then, amongst the teaching profession at least, to religious identities forcing themselves through over and above any other identities. So Keith Jegbo, why are teachers so hostile to religious symbols in this?
I personally wouldn't be hostile as a head teacher to religious symbols in schools. I think that's something that ways in which children can express themselves. And I also think that there is an issue therefore about student voice and what students are saying about this. Now, I know that can go to extremes. I know that's in a sense simplistic. You can push that too far. But my view is that there needs to be a debate in schools about that sort of thing. I don't think this is something that one should be enforcing on pupils without hearing the pupil voice, the community voice and the parent voice, and arriving, if possible, at some sort of consensual agreement.
Douglas Murray, do you think these other identities squeeze out Britishness and should therefore be...
I know it's sort of heretical to say this on a programme that's a debate, but everyone keeps on talking about the importance of debate. Schools are not meant to be places in which children debate their religious identity and things. They should learn things. They should be educated among others. They should be educated first and foremost. I don't think social engineering is what teachers are meant to be doing. But secondly, do we really want schools to be places of religious factionalisation and so on? I'd hope not.
But schools are about debate. They're about intellectual. They're about thinking things through. They're about understanding, about talking about things.
Yeah, the gentleman here.
I'm a minority twice over. I'm a Geordie Muslim. We all have many identities, multiple identities, and it's very funny coming here about Britishness, because Britishness has never been defined. It's always been what we're not rather than what we are. We're not the other.
Addy, I mean, I guess your strongest sense of being British must come from when you're performing as an athlete.
Growing up in East London, it was very interesting for me because I was probably only one of 2 black kids in the school. But I kind of found that the whole Britishness and the racial barriers were overcome for me because of sport. You know, and I remember when I initially went into the school, I was worried that, first of all, that people would take the mickey out of me because of the way I was dressed, because my mum dressed me up and it wasn't great. The way I walked, you know, because I had a limp, I walked on calipers, and also because of my colour. But I was fortunate that the sport changed that and it moved me on and helped me. But as I said to you before, it took me many years to be comfortable with saying that I was British.
So, we've heard some definitions of Britishness, but why does it matter? Back in the summer of 2001, a series of race riots broke out in Britain's cities. The first of them in Oldham was sparked by tensions between the white and Asian communities. In the soul-searching that followed, segregation was identified as a contributing factor to the violence, and the search for new methods of bringing communities together began. One pioneering theatre company has been taking a play about extremist views into our schools.
I'm English, mate. That's what. Can you say that? You tell me what it is, and I'll tell you if I can.
My name's Dave Jones. I'm from GW Theatre Company, and we've developed a touring piece of theatre about extremism. I think Oldham Council were particularly interested in working on it because they did have the disturbances some years ago, and they've spent the time since then doing some fantastic work in trying to encourage different communities to come together. The sad thing is at the moment that some young people don't really have a sense of self at all, so they're much more vulnerable to those views that some people have that are quite extreme, that might be racist, and they haven't really got the skills or the education or the knowledge or the confidence sometimes to challenge.
I thought it was really important in Oldham to be dealing with these sort of things because there's loads of different cultures around, and everywhere you look there's no one that's the same.
In a country that is changing, for some people it's becoming quite important to know who they are in a way. And the fantastic thing is that a lot of young people are already thinking about that.
So, Keitha Jegbo, do you really believe that if schools start getting this right as the way you see it, you can stop British citizens becoming suicide bombers, stop riots in our towns and cities?
No, I don't think you can necessarily stop it. You can't say that you can stop anything, but I would have thought you can move towards doing that. And I think there is an important issue about how we live together. And I think it's different contextually in different parts of the country. It's different in London to it is in Bradford. It's different in a largely white area to it is in a multicultural area.
But isn't that the basic point? I mean, the point with all the, with the 7/7 bombers, the great debate after that was, how on earth could these people who were British citizens turn on their own country and their own people and their own culture to some extent? That's why everybody said we've got to re-engender this notion of Britishness and pride and love for our nation. If you can't do that,
but that
then
surely,
this is just talk,
but surely that is the debate. Why did they? I mean, I was really struck by Oldham Sixth Form College when I visited there, just after the 7/7, where they had some people in their sixth form who had extremist views. And you might say, stop them talking, stop them discussing it. What they did is they brought as many sixth formers into the debate as possible so they could get a debate going and so that they could establish some commonality and some values that you might be seen as not necessarily British values, but values that are about living together. And I think we've got to establish how we live together. And I think it's important that we establish how we live together. What our national identity is might come from how we live together. Following on from that, you might get a definition, a newly evolving definition, if that's necessary in a global world, of Britishness.
In the Teachers TV documentary, Brit Camp, 6 children from across the UK who wouldn't normally mix were sent on a trip to the Lake District to see if they could overcome their divisions.
For these children, Britain is a place where communities are divided.
I wouldn't be mates with an Asian in Bradford because people around me would take the mick out of me and him.
Sometimes when I hear people, black and white, talking about terrorists, sometimes I think they're aiming at me because of my colour and background.
Well, Niall, who we saw in that clip there, is with us as well, and thanks for being brave enough to go on the telly and brave enough to be here as well. I mean, how did the whole experience affect you, change your opinions?
Before, I said, to be British, you have to have white skin, and that your mum and dad have to be British. And it changed after that because, well, now I think you have to have a British passport and, live in Britain. And,
colour of your skin doesn't matter?
No.
Dad's here as well. So where do you think that idea came from? Are you surprised that that's what he was thinking? I mean,
a little bit, but not. See where we come from. We have Asian communities and white communities, and we just do not mix. I don't know why that is, but that's how it is.
And you've no desire to either after this.
I have Asian friends, I've got black family, but It's just how it is.
So it's just that where you live, the communities don't.
Like that gentleman said, it's like ghetto.
So Keith Ejegbo, how do you deal with that specific kind of problem?
I mean, we did some work in Bradford, and one of the big things that happened after the riots in Bradford was something called the School Linking Network, which was an effort to get schools with very different populations, all white, all Asian, to get together and work together, and to do this in the curriculum. So they'd spend 6 days in each other's schools, lots of email links. And in fact, when we went up to visit that, we found that people then could begin to discover that they had things in common. And I think that's important, that you've got to try and make sure that people meet with each other and talk with each other and do find that while they do have differences, they share things. And it's going to be it's a slow process.
Yes, the lady here on the second row from the back.
I teach in a very diverse school, a really diverse classroom, and it's really wonderful. And I'd very much agree with some of the comments that were made about they have very strong values and they do have a strong sense of identity, but they need to be given the chance to bring that and share that and explore it. So it's less about imposing identity and values and more about helping them to realise and understand their kind of commonalities, but they need to be given a forum to do that.
Well, look, one of the other obvious areas of division, apart from just people living in different areas, is the whole question of faith schools and to what extent they divide us. Ibrahim Hewitt, you're from the Association of Muslim Schools. Don't Muslim schools fundamentally divide us?
Why should they? Most of the schools in this country are not Muslim schools. The vast majority of schools in this country are white, so-called white, and monocultural. And I think the whole issue of attacks on Muslim schools, on faith schools particularly, it's a red herring.
Well, you're right, it's not just about Muslim schools, it's about Catholic schools and Jewish schools and Church of England schools as well. Martin Nirsimlu from St Matthew's Academy. Martin, now you're from a Catholic school. Don't faith schools divide us?
Oh, no, I don't think so at all. I think most faith schools look at values, and the key values being people working together and building a community. And I think it's very important that we try and tie in being British into that type of faith school system.
Do faith schools and religion in school get in the way?
I do think they get in the way. I do think that they do divide. But the problem is, if you've got Catholic schools, if you've got Jewish schools, if you've got Church of England schools, then you've got to allow for the Muslim schools and the Sikh schools. But absolutely, they do divide by their very nature, by the very nature of what they're called. They're saying these are the only group of people that we want in this school.
Keith Porteous-Wood here from the National Secular Society.
Well, the government is saying it wants cohesion, but actually it's doing completely the opposite. It's actually engineering educational apartheid with the minority schools programme. What we're having is more and more minority faith schools and a process to have many more still. And what these schools are one religion, largely one culture, and almost all minority ethnic.
Okay, so Keith Ejegbo, I mean, hasn't the government slightly got itself in a muddle here, in that it was the government that promoted faith schools and diversity in education, and now it's trying to sort of pull everything back into
I think
the
it's
stable?
a difficult one. I mean, I think in reality, politically, there's always going to be faith schools. I mean, faith schools are successful. I mean, at this moment in time, politically, you're not going to get rid of faith schools.
But well, the truth is that because there were Church of England and Catholic schools, the government felt it had to equalise rights.
It's quite a difficult argument not to get out of that. And I think it's then, once you've got faith schools, it's what those faith schools do to get themselves back into the community and work with other schools. Some faith schools are really good at that and make a lot of effort to go out and build links. Others aren't. And I think it's a question then of inspection and what they actually do.
Jay Lakhani, you've got your hand up there.
In a way, we have to move from where we are rather than where we hope we would be. So I would agree with Sir Keith Ejegbo that faith schools are here to stay. So the idea is to make them evolve to take into account the changing needs of a multi-faith and no-faith society that we live in. So the faith schools have to continue to show a more inclusivist approach in the way they admit the youngsters, the way they choose their staff, to be more inclusivist. In that sense, they will reflect the needs of the kind of multi-faith and no-faith society.
Aren't you basically trying to have it both ways?
Yes, indeed, I am. But the thing is... but this is
and you're a Hindu, so
this is natural. For a pluralist Hindu, this is very natural.
OK, we're going to take a short break now, but coming up, we'll be asking what the Britishness debate means in schools and looking at how teachers are handling the duty of teaching social cohesion. That's in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back to the big debate. We've heard a lot about what Britishness is, why it may or may not be important, but what does it mean for teachers and how is it being taught? One school that's on the front line of teaching in our multicultural inner cities is the Pimlico Academy in central London.
Can you write one sentence saying how London would be different if it wasn't diverse?
We've always taken citizenship really seriously in this school. We use as many different activities as possible, so we use debate quite a lot, we use role play. We want it to be a lesson where kids are able to discover what their opinions about certain topics are. We cover issues to do with diversity, human rights, the criminal justice system, the UK's place in the world, Britishness. If we're thinking about human rights, we might look at Big Brother, and then we might also look at voting behaviour in terms of Big Brother and then expand it onto sort of UK democracy. Because anything that's happening in the world you can relate to citizenship. So you open a paper and every story you could actually use as a teaching resource in a lesson. We haven't ever taught citizenship here as if we're delivering content. We want to know what the kids feel about their world and help them to understand it better.
Well, that's Pimlico Academy in London. So, Keith Ajegbo, how much guidance and help do British schools need on this to get it right?
I think schools probably do need quite a lot of help, and there has been some through, the fourth strand of citizenship was one way of giving them that sort of help. But I think that what teachers need help with is dealing with controversial issues. I think this whole thing about identity and diversity and national identity is about going into things like race, going into things like immigration, not saying that there's some sort of panacea that it's easy, but getting children to be able to voice their differences and teachers feeling confident that they can mediate the argument and take those arguments forward and look back
What about schools where there are no differences? What about the community school in Cornwall? Where
but I mean,
basically from the same community.
I think that there's issues there. I mean, I think you start with your own community anyway, and then a community school in Cornwall would look that its community is not homogenous; it will be different. But you can't avoid in the media, if you watch British television, if you read any British newspaper at any time, you cannot avoid issues about differences in terms of culture and race and religion. It comes up all the time, and any school that tried to avoid it would be put in their head, I would have thought, in the sand. And isn't this the stuff of intellectual debate about what the next generation needs to be thinking about and voicing and having opinions about?
Baljeet Gale, is the citizenship curriculum, if you like, the right way to do this?
I think the content of the citizenship curriculum is the right way to do things, but I don't think it should be taught as a discrete subject. I think it should be part and parcel of other subjects. English teachers, geography teachers, history teachers, RE teachers have talked about these issues for many, many, many years, and it's time we thought about how they could be included in other subjects.
So it should be mainstreamed, if you like.
It should be mainstreamed, and I think students would take it far more seriously.
Douglas Murray.
The horrible whiff of social engineering around all of this, which always leads to a particular political slant getting its particular desired social engineering output. We've seen for decades we've had multiculturalism instead of multiracialism or pluralism as the social mainstream that's been forced on this country. It failed for decades. There were lots of people who suffered because of that. The social engineering that is being envisioned here, at a time when I can't remember, somebody in the audience will know the percentage of pupils coming out of school unable to read or write, it is grotesque to sit here talking about spending this amount of educational hours, talking about how people feel. They can do that in their spare time.
So a school should basically just teach people to read, write,
add up,
if
they could read and write, they'd probably be better members of any community they're in.
Baljeet.
There are things that you do in school, like reading Othello, like reading of Mice and Men, where the issues of racism, sexism are there. You have to deal with them. You have to talk about them.
Aren't you taking an absurdly simplistic notion of what education is?
Absolutely.
No, I've got a very cynical view of what teachers can accomplish in special lessons to tell people what they should be.
Who wants to come in on that? Yes, in the audience there.
I don't think it is telling people what they should be. That's the whole point. It's allowing young people to decide what they want to be, not just in a local, national context, but also a global context.
On the end there, you had your hand up.
I think we're still putting the cart before the horse here, because we've still got no idea what it is to be British. We've been talking about it for half an hour. We've been saying we've got common values, but no one said any of these values.
So, so what, you want somebody to define it?
Well, no, because
hand it down from the Department of Education?
Because I think it's something that's very hard to define. We're not a country like America where it's clear they have life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and they are prescribed what it is.
On the end there, yes, second row from the back.
On the issue of social engineering, on one hand we're saying that it'll be social engineering if we teach citizenship and in schools, but however we're looking to define Britishness. Is not trying to define Britishness and impose Britishness on everyone also social engineering?
I want to hear from some of the children in the audience because we've got various pupils. Up on the back row there. Now, what's your view of what you've been hearing?
In citizenship, we learn about being citizens, different roles. People have different roles in life. That just because someone has a different belief or believe differently or anything, their skin or anything, doesn't mean that they're any different.
OK, what about somebody else from your school?
We're known as a stereotype, not to achieve as much as we can, that we're a lower class of people.
How about the pupils here from Pimlico? What do you think? How would you like to be taught?
I think the way the teachers teach us in Pimlico is actually quite good because they go into detail about each religion and they don't just step around the edges, they go into detail and you understand everything and the culture of people. OK, yeah, you had your hand up just in front there.
Yes, I think that we're taught very well in St Albans School, but I think that all schools should be taught in subjects like history, not only the success of our country, but also the failure that our country has induced.
Fiona Kisby.
One thing, the two words I don't think I've heard today are human rights. And if there are any values that we should all hold in common, that is the one thing we all have in common in this room is human rights, if nothing else. And we're talking about oaths of allegiance, etc. Why not an oath of allegiance to the Declaration of Human Rights, controversial as that may seem?
Well, Sir Keith, what about that? An oath of allegiance to the Declaration of Human Rights. Next government might scrap it, mightn't
That's a whole other issue. That's a whole other issue. But can I just pick up on the point that the boys made at the back? Because I think that point about blackness and Britishness and how people are seen is one of the controversial issues that this debate should open up in schools. It's one of those things that should be spoken about if you want people to feel that they live together and are equal and have equal opportunities. And I think that really highlighted what is an important issue for us here.
Does that make you at all uncomfortable, what you heard there, Douglas Murray?
Look, I mean, I have no idea what what your experience is in your school. I would say, though, that the sense of grievance which is often taught to children, that is taught and thought to be permissible by children.
Grievance,
I'm not saying in his particular cases. I'm just saying that students, pupils, children of any age have lots of reasons to dislike the system. That doesn't matter what colour your skin, what your faith, you have reasons to dislike the system. I think in addition to that, there has been an idea in recent years that there are permissible grievances.
Baljeet Gill.
Absolutely not. The students there have an opinion. It's how they feel in school. They're expressing exactly what is happening to them in a system. It's not something that they've been taught. It's something that they feel once they're in school, once they're outside school. I'm not sure what Douglas Murray's notion of education is. We want all young people to leave as confident young people who are able to express their opinions, who are able to know their rights, etc. That's exactly what we want.
I would just say, the word I keep on, if you just use it again, the word I keep on hearing here, I feel like Alice in Wonderland, is feel. How do they feel? Tell me how you feel. What are your feelings? I don't think that the feelings of children are the most important thing the educational system can address. I think they should educate children. This is the idea that the primary purpose of education is to ask people how they feel continually.
If I can, like robots.
I'm saying that this
is
no.
You just put information into and nothing else matters.
I'm saying it is not the role of the schools. It is not the role of the state to decide how people should feel, to encourage them to feel a particular way. That comes from family. It comes from all sorts of things.
If a child feels alienated at school, right? Shouldn't you have to deal with it?
Nobody is pro-alienation. You're missing my point.
I'm not. But I'm saying you're dismissing alienation.
No,
you're just saying saying, well, so what? No
I'm saying
worries.
the primary role of education is not and cannot be addressing how every pupil feels, what they feel the grievances are against them. We could spend you could spend 18 years in education and you would still come out saying, I don't feel that everything about me that's complex has been addressed. But that's not what the education system is for.
Gentleman in the second row there.
Douglas, I'm really glad you're here because clearly you're a complete controversialist and that's what you do.
No, I mean it.
And that's wonderful, but if you listen to the young people here and their voices, Niall here said, there are many different ways of being a British citizen, but what we have in common is our citizenship. And becoming an effective citizen is something which I hope that our schools can prepare our young people to do, not just to read and write. If you listen to the voices of the young people who spoke from the back of the room, and those experiences of racism, those experiences of inequality, they need to be dealt with and they need to find ways of responding to that. And being an effective citizen will give them the skills to be able to respond to that in their future.
Is Alison Ryan here from the ATL? Alison, where are you? What's your perspective on whether schools can cope with this demand that's being placed on them?
There's kind of two questions. The first one that we've just been talking about is should, and I think they should certainly attempt to deal with aspects of community cohesion, to deal with aspects of citizenship. Whether they always can, whether they're equipped to do so, is another question. Earlier in the debate, continuing professional development was mentioned. I think that's crucial for teachers who before haven't necessarily dealt with these, or they haven't dealt with them specifically, because some of these things are quite controversial. And I think it's also very important, when the duty to promote community cohesion was put on schools, one of the things that we had real issue with, it talked purely in terms of race, and that's vital, but it didn't talk about the other elements of identity. So it didn't talk as much about religion as we would have hoped, and it also didn't talk about things like sexuality.
Tony Breslin from the Citizenship Foundation. Do British schools have the resources to do this?
Citizenship education is under-resourced. It was introduced to the curriculum in 2002. As of last year, only 45% of the teachers charged with teaching citizenship had some specialist background in it. Belgit's right that English teachers and humanities and social science teachers have dealt with issues of identity through literature and what have you. But there is a specialist core here. We need to have a discrete component and a cross-curricular component, and we need the specialist teachers to deliver it.
OK, well, we're getting into the final minutes, and I want some final thoughts from our guests up here on the stage. What is the takeaway thought, if you like, for teachers watching this when it comes to whether they should be doing this and how they do it? Baljit.
How they do it should be within the curriculum, not as a discrete subject. Let's have the debates. That's absolutely fine. And let's listen to what the students come to school with. These young people are not empty vessels. They have ideas, they have opinions, and by expressing them, they're doing the very thing that Douglas Murray thinks they're not. They're actually educating themselves.
Douglas Murray.
I like the idea that kids are meant to educate themselves at schools now. Perhaps the schools aren't doing it for them. Look, if I sat down anyone in this room and I said to them, who are you? And kept on demanding an answer, Naomi, what really makes you up? They'd have a breakdown. I would, anyone would. But yet we do it to our society constantly and are surprised that our society can't reply with a homogeneous, uniform answer. Britishness is complex. I gave a definition of what I think it is at the beginning. So did other people. But one of the things I would just like to finish and re-stress is that this idea, maths teachers up and down the country have to be able to teach maths because everyone agrees that 2 + 2 tends to equal 4 and so on. It's about facts. Citizenship is not an exact science. It's not an agreed upon science. The example of multiculturalism shows us how bad things can be if everyone lands on the same place and decides that's what we'll teach from now on. I think we have to be very wary about the idea that people born and brought up in this society are solely to be created by the schools they go to. I think there are 100 other things that make up our citizens. Schools are a part of it, but they are not the way to engineer pupils.
Addy.
I think every generation has an opportunity to define themselves and define who they are, you know, and we're at a stage where society has become very complex and there are so many factors that are affecting us, but what we ultimately have control of is the ability to define who we are and where we want to go. You know, and we have to take that opportunity. That has got to come from us. You know, if we want to be British, then the opportunity is there. You know, we can skirt around it with all of these issues and all of these debates, but ultimately, you have to want to become British.
Sir Keith Ejegbo.
Well, I think education is about discussing. It's getting children to think, to voice things, to work things out. And I think this is one of the big issues of our time. How we live together is one of the big issues of our time. And it's not just for minority ethnic children, it's for white children, it's for white working class children as well, who've got similar issues. So it's for all our communities. And I think it's absolutely vital and crucial. And I agree that teachers need more help and training to be able to take this on in a way that is demanding and exacting and gets the kids really thinking.
Well, that's it for the debate here in the studio. If you would like to continue to explore the issues raised here today, there's a range of related programming available to view on the website at teachers.tv. Thank you very much indeed to our panel, Douglas Murray, Baljit Gale, Sir Keith Ejegbo and Adi Adipitan. Thank you very much indeed to the audience here in the studio as well. From me and everyone here, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.